Hello. So I had a psychotic episode last night, and I thought since I'm making these videos, it would be useful to talk to you about what it was like, and keep this as a log for myself as future reference. So firstly, what I mean by psychotic episode is a moment where reality is completely lost and you're absorbed by delusion and you are no longer in the same world as the normal world. There is no rationality, there is no logic, there's no reason. You are completely gone in the psychotic realm. It happened about 8 o'clock last night. I'm undergoing a lot of stress because my wrist is swollen. I've got third stage RSI in my wrists, and they fatigue very easily, and my right is worse than my left from using a PC at my previous web design job. And so I can't do much with it. And because of the stress, it was swelling, and it started like 2 days ago, and it was really, really bad. It was like, probably the most painful it's been ever. And I was Googling it and I was catastrophizing, and I kind of came to the conclusion in my head, well, this is going to be me for life. It's a permanent injury, which is what it says online. I've been to physiotherapies and they couldn't figure out what it was, but that's apparently because of poor training and understanding of RSI. It's quite funny because that's the same as psychoses. But anyway, it triggered a high amount of stress, which triggers my psychoses. And because I've been in this state for a couple of weeks, I've been feeling lonely, isolated. I've been encouraging delusions more than I should, and kind of engaging in a bit of fantasy creation as well. And so last night, during that stress, the dark aspects of the fantasical thinking took hold. And I fully believed and had the auditory hallucinations experience that I was in a simulation again, and that there was a secret army of people all standing around the house, and I was hearing people outside through auditory hallucinations. When I was Googling things, I was hearing them say, look, he's Googling this stuff now. And then I would be hearing lots of people in the walls, which I know that there isn't that many people even in the house or even in the area. But, it sounds like sometimes you can be in the middle of a concert in a strange way. And this simulation was basically that I needed to die in order to get out of it. And that's when things get really dangerous, because I'd been in an instance like that before, and it's the way it makes you feel emotionally that you are stuck and that there is no way out of it. And the dark side of the fantasical thinking is that I'm not going to win against an army of people like that, and that they have a lot more money. They're like a secret organization or something. That's usually how my delusions go. And so when I get absorbed in that, I'm absorbed. And this is why medication is so useful, because medication prevents you from being that absorbed. Luckily, for some reason, maybe I've learned a lot over the years, but let me walk you through why it fully happens. So 2 weeks ago, I'm feeling lonely, and I'm feeling like no one's listening to me. I've sent out my essays to lots of doctors in the field of schizophrenia, psychoses, and I feel like I have new information that's really useful, and no one has messaged me back, and everyone has let me down. No, not even the slightest bit of curiosity. The things that I know are gaps in the literature, but I don't go to Yale or Harvard, I suppose, so I'm not interesting. That's a silly thing to say. It's just crazy. Maybe I don't even know if what I'm saying there is any utility to it. But I was feeling lonely and really let down by the world, so I was starting to engage in a little bit more fantasy. I was thinking, oh, maybe this is I'm working for a secret organization, and the cure for schizophrenia is being hidden by the world, and maybe they don't want to know that there are things that can improve it, namely being a higher societal level of truth and honesty, which we don't have. We all know that, right? So I was kind of thinking that I was working with a secret organization. And then as that goes on, I start to notice more signs, which is kind of how it happens. Maybe I walk past someone on the street and they'll nod, and I'll be like, oh, that's someone working with them, right? And then as I kind of progress through the day, I build up more thoughts, and then I'm building architecture, which I talk about in my other videos. I'm building the architecture for the psychotic episode. So I notice more things delusionally, because the brain predisposed to noticing patterns. So I'm seeing patterns in nothing, and then I'm building thoughts based on those patterns, based on nothing. And those thoughts then create an architecture, like a tree in the mind, right? And the thing about that is it might be positive to begin with, but then once the stressful trigger comes along, maybe I'm in a job and I've taken on a large workload, which has happened in the past, or maybe this time I've got severe pain in my wrist and I feel like I'm not going to recover. Any stressful trigger then activates what I call the dark symmetry of the delusion, which is when, okay, I'm working with this secret organization and it's all great. We're going to uncover the mystery of the condition I'm suffering from and we're going to work towards helping the world. I get stressed. Now, all of a sudden, the flip side of that, the organization is against me and that they're trying to hunt me down and they don't want this secret revealed. It's all nonsense. I'm not saying any of this is true. It's all nonsense. I know it is. But what happens is I encourage those building thought processes. I get to the break, it switches to a dark side, and then all of a sudden I lose touch because the emotions then activate. Like all of a sudden I'm fearing for my life. All of a sudden I'm like afraid beyond belief. All of a sudden I can't move. I'm shaking. This is the stuff that happens. And then it's each time it's like a new tempering delusion for me. But I am catching on to that. It's about prevention. You can't do anything once someone's in a psychotic episode. But and then the emotions flare up, and that locks me into the experience even more because the emotional systems in the brain, that amygdaloidal area, hypothalamic area, results in a lot of your fight, flight, and emotional systems. That has the power to shut down the logical regions. Then that means that your logical thoughts can't rationalize and calm your systems down, so it turns into a spiral. Ultimately, the way that I've always dealt with these episodes was because when I was 20 years old, I decided that I was really onto something with this, that there was a real gap in the literature. And Carl Jung said, this is one of his quotes, that in the 50 years of his experience, he believes schizophrenia can be treated with the right amount of psychotherapeutic intervention. And I really believe him, and I believe a lot of his work, and I think he's ahead of time. And for him to say that, I truly believe it because it's the signs of what I've seen in myself too. Like I know what I need. But when I was 20, I decided, I read this book called The Wisdom of Psychopaths, that I would just sit through any experience, no matter how difficult or how tough it was, I would sit through it. And if you look at my other video, The Hypothesis on Schizophrenia, the foundational distrust in the nervous system, well, there's only two ways to really overcome trust issues, right? And that is to have it earned, so people help you gain trust in them, right? And they treat you like a nervous, anxious dog, and they, treat you well until you trust them, which just doesn't happen in this modern world, really. Everyone's against each other. We all know that deep down, not in a bad way. We just, it feels like a very distrustful world. And then the other option is what I learned from Jordan Peterson, which was bravery. And that's what I've used every single psychotic episode, is that no matter what faces me, I will stand and I will wait until I can think rationally again. And there's a lot of complexity to that, and it's been very dangerous. It's caused me a lot of harm, and going through all this without medication. But that's ultimately how I get over what I've just explained. The building of the delusion, irresponsibly building the delusion in my mind, having a stressful experience which triggers the dark side of that delusion, and then overcoming the emotional experience. What I do is I wait it out, which I can't reasonably advise to anybody, but I know there's people out there that do it. I spoke to my friends and some of them do it to some degree, but it is very dangerous because if you lose your cool, this one time actually I got put in an A&E ward, and I lied to the doctors again to leave early, but I'd lost some of my clothes up to that point. So I was in one of the inpatient gowns, and I remember just desperately wanting to leave and lying and saying, I'm fine. It's because I left some medication. I told them that I wasn't on my meds for I can't remember what I told them, depression meds, and they made me kooky if I hadn't taken them. I looked up how they needed to let me out, etc. And then I was running through town, because I was in a foreign town at this point, to try and get back to transport whilst wearing one of the hospital gowns. So as funny as that is, it's also the negative consequence of not getting your health in order and getting the right medication for you. I'm a bit different because I've had my trust broken in the medical health professionals, and even when I've tried taking medication, for me now it becomes part of the delusion, and I stop taking the meds anyway, and it's just a mess. Ultimately, yeah, I think that that's everything that I wanted to say. But let me just explain what I mean by symmetrical architecture. So think about when you say you're going to go somewhere with a group of friends, right? And you plan out the whole day. Once you've planned out that whole day, that day doesn't exist yet, does it? Like, it's not happened. There's no recorded accounts in history. It's a future prediction of what you're going to do at this time, that time, this time. When you've created that architecture in the mind, you can then also have thoughts about, oh God, what if the train doesn't come at 2:00? Or, oh, what if someone's late and then we have to get on the 12:30 train? When you've built an architecture, it opens up all these other possibilities. And that's what happens in the psychotic episode, is when you are building these delusions based on faulty pattern recognition, you're building up an architecture which may be very tempting in the beginning, but it turns very dark the moment you get stressed and you get anxious because the emotions take hold. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. And to anyone out there, really, that is suffering from psychoses, it gets better. Like, it just does. And you can take it from me, who has suffered with this for 12 years, and some people who have had schizophrenia for like 20 plus years, I've spoke to them about my symptoms and they're like, never had that before. Never, no, that's never been the thing that I've experienced. And, you know, if you're to take anything from this, it does get better. It's just a matter of time and effort, most importantly. But after like several psychotic episodes, some incredibly severe, and some like last night, only lasting 4 or 5 hours where I completely lose touch, I can confidently say that if you're willing to remain calm, focus on a good philosophy, an emotional system of control, like, you know, mindfulness, and talking to people, most importantly, being open about the things you experience with a therapist, that's so important. You will get better, you know, you just naturally get better. The mind is so incredible at healing itself. You just have to be really mindful over what you're thinking, and don't encourage any delusional thoughts. Yeah, have a good day.